Today, we come to answer a question that somehow, in all this time, I have not yet addressed. What is the greatest triple triad playing country? I came up with 7 countries I thought were contenders. There are, of course, lots of people where I don't know where they're from. There are a few people in here where I have heard it disputed where they're from, but assigned them to a country. They may or may not may not have chosen to assign themselves. So hopefully I got most people basically right. To me, it seemed there were 7 clear best countries, so we're going to talk about those. There were countries that had a standout star, but no one else I knew of who played from that country. There were other countries who had a lot of pretty good players, but no standout star. I ended up with these as the clear top 7. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of their case for the top 7 of all time, top 7 countries. I'm going to go through the case for each. I'm going to talk about what I think the best team they can put forth is of up to 10 players per country, and minimally however few make it. One will be in here with just 2 players, another will reach the full 10. I'll only include players if they made my top 100 tournament players. If they didn't, I cut the team off there, right? If there were 5 players in the top 100, I said their team was 5 players deep. So I'm going to go over the pros and cons of the case for each team. Then I'm going to try to say what I think is like the strongest argument I can make for that country being the best country ever. And then I have some stats at the end, and then I'll ask you what you think. So it should be a quick video. Our first country, we're going in alphabetical order, is Canada. Canada has won 10 championships and 48 icons with a population of 38 million people. We will do some adjustments for population size, so this won't just be like the biggest countries dominate. Their team is Delial and Seto and Piggyman and Foyer. It is the only country with 2 GOAT contenders, greatest of all time contenders from that country. It is also 3rd in championships won, despite being I guess it's technically the 4th biggest of the 7 countries, so right in the middle. But if you actually looked at the populations, it's one of the smaller countries here. And yet, despite that, it is close to the top in both championships won and in icons. Not only does it have the 2 GOAT contenders, it had someone who is very much in contention for best to never win, and in contention, if he's not currently best to never win, to get that title soon. Downsides to this team. They only have 4 players in my top 100. The Canadian team drops off. There are other active and reasonable players, but there are only 4 who really stand out in tournament history, and that's going to make this one of the smaller teams. And also, it is Canada. I know. I think the best case I can make for Canada is their 2 best players. And so when I make the best case for a country, I'm going to sort of make it strongest. So you will hear me call a lot of different players the best ever, because I think for the argument Canada to be strongest, it would be if you think Seto and Delial are the 2 best players ever. That is a reasonable thing to think. So I'm going to make claims kind of assuming the most optimistic, compelling case. And I think the most compelling case for Canada is they have the 2 best players of all time, along with 2 other really excellent players. How could they not be the best country ever, right? And even if you don't think those are the top 2 ever, they're the only country with 2 of the top 5. They're the only country with 2 of the top 7. There's another country that might have 2 of the top 7 or 8, but almost certainly you think Delial and Seto are better than the 2 players from that country. So they are just far and away the best duo we have here, and Piggyman is a truly excellent 3rd, and Foyer is a solid 4th. And notably, if we were matching these teams up against each other, Foyer is quite an inconsistent player, but generally performed really well against highly rated opponents. So I think the argument for Canada is this top 2 is really untouchable. No country, in my opinion, but I think just clearly has a top 2 at all close to this top 2. Next we have the Czech Republic. They have 7 titles, 31 icons, and a population of only 10.7 million, the 2nd smallest country we will consider. And their team is only 2 members, but they are successful enough, they're still going to look really good. Yojimbo and Chickeny. Per population, they have the most titles and second most icons. They also have a pretty decent haul, even if you don't adjust for population, but if you do, man, does it look good. They have the all-time leader in championships. Yojimbo won all 7 of Czech Republic's titles. And he also leads in lots of other stats. They have 2 top 20 all-time players. I think the downsides of their case is basically, can a country be the greatest triple triad playing country of all time if they have 2 players, right? You can't field a team of 4 or a team of 6 or whatever, but even a team of 4, they just can't field one, right? So they have this incredible small talent. Can you be the greatest triple triad country of all time with this small but impressive a talent pool? So I think the best case you could make for them would be to say, Yojimbo is the greatest player of all time. He has won more tournaments than anyone else. His peak run in 2013 is absolutely absurd. And Chickeny is the greatest player to never win a tournament. He has made 3 finals, which is tied for the most of anyone not to win, and he has done so with significantly higher rates than the other 3-time finalists. And also while putting up good records specifically against the other 3-time finalists. So the argument here would be these 2 players are so good, and the country is small enough you wouldn't expect them to have anywhere remotely close to this, that this is the greatest triple triad playing country. Our third country is Finland. Finland is the smallest country we will talk about. They only have 1 title, and it came relatively late in the 13th site championship. They have 19 icons, very small population of 5.5 million, but their team's pretty sweet. Black Bolt, who Ace called the greatest Finnish player of all time, Jadat and Tezuka, who were always, in my opinion, the 2 contenders for greatest Finnish player of all time. Dream Virus, who's really up there, and Acela, who's the tournament winner, and we haven't seen as much of, but has been really impressive in what we have seen. So, a tremendously strong team. The biggest team we've seen so far. Finland, despite being the smallest country, has the most top players of the countries we have considered so far, which is really impressive. I think this is just obviously a very talented group of players. It is the most icons per the population they have of any country. And despite being half the size of Czech Republic and an 1/8 the size of Canada or a 1/7 the size of Canada, they have a deeper team than either. And this is despite the fact also that Black Bolt played very few single-player tournaments, so their team is not even getting full credit for the amount of talent they have on display. I think the downside is really they have 1 championship. There is no one here that is a serious case for being a top 10 player of all time. I have no one here in the top 30 of all time, though a bunch of players here are quite close to that mark and could easily get there. But I think Finland is probably, to spoil my opinions, is probably the weakest of these 7 countries. But I also think it's a really remarkably strong country. Very small, very skilled. I think these players have more success and skill than the tournament resume shows. And just one of those countries you run across and you keep noticing as all these elite players come from there, yet it's so tiny. So I think they're probably not the pick for greatest country of all time. I'm pretty confident they're not. I realize I've not made the case for them here. What is the best case I could make here? It's just per population, no country has been more successful than Finland in most stats. There are a few where other countries have been more so. But per population, Finland is up there for most successful across most of the stats you can check. So I don't think it's Finland, but I think they're a super cool triple triad country, and I'm excited to see what Tezuka and Acela can do moving forward. Then we have Germany. Now, Germany, I typoed here, which is to say I miscounted icons and then counted it up correctly later and did not adjust the number here. So I believe it should say 83 million population, 5 titles, around 30 icons. Not that much more. But more. Their team is awesome, though. They have Doc Evil, arguably the best ever. They have Nimloth, arguably the best ever, despite not playing tournaments much. They have Vid, 2-time winner. They have Meta, strong winner. They have Metis, tied for most finals without having won. And then they have a bunch of basically early legends. C17, just very well thought of player. Biddy and Yevon are 2 finalists. Spitfire's another finalist, and Scythe, very strong player. Homer recently considered him one of the best underrated players. So pros for this team. Doc and Nimloth are excellent, and the pure tourney stuff does not give them full value. Obviously, if they had played tournaments regularly and played longer, they would have amassed tons more icons and probably more titles for Germany. The only other team as deep as this, notice they have 10 players in my top 100, is the USA, which is much, much bigger. So just an incredibly strong, deep team. And I think you can also look at this team and say many of these are kind of short-term players or players that didn't play tournaments much. You know, C17, Biddy, Spitfire, all very short-term. Doc Evil and Nimloth, too, for tournaments. The resume could look a lot better than it does looking at this talent. And the talent should not be, criticized for not having even more achievement than they do. Downsides for this team. I do think, given the talent listed here, this is a relatively low haul for tournaments and Icons 1. And once I use the adjusted count, Vid does not have half their icons, but he does have over a third of their icons. And that is very reliant for stats on a player who, while excellent, is, not a top 10 all-time player. Though he's very close, actually. Vid's pretty great. I think the best case I can make for Germany would be Doc Evil is the best ever in tournaments, and Nimloth, based on the games they played between each other, is probably his equal, just didn't play tournaments. These are quite plausibly the 2 most talented triple triad players ever. They did not play much. We don't have extensive tests of it, but there's a very good case that they are the 2 most talented players ever. And if they just played more, we'd have the records for it. And then the rest of the team is very deep and very strong. So I argued for Canada that Dalial and Seto is clearly the best duo. This is the only one you could argue is close. Now, normally I'm very reliant on tournament records, but these are 2 players where you might say that's just not going to at all capture the story. These 2 are the 2 most talented players in triple triad history. And Germany not only has them, but they have a very deep team to back it up. So that's my case for Germany. Then we have Poland. Poland, with a population of about 38 million, has 33 icons and 4 titles. Their team is ridiculously good. It is MC, Nightwish, Karmazin, Kazakh, Slawio, and Gafgarian. Of the smaller countries, it's clearly the deepest. Canada had 4 members. They have 6. Finland was close with 5, but Poland's 6 are clearly better than Finland's 5. If I put finals count here, later we will see finals count. It does look better than just the icon count. Karmazin only played 2 tournaments. He, based on me watching him play, seems like a clear top 10 all-time talent, and they're only getting credit out of him for 1 title and 2 icons, and it could be so much more. Coming into this, I kind of thought I was going to come out of it picking them as the GOAT triple triad country, largely on the basis that if I was thinking if each country had a team of 4 players, because 4v4 is kind of a standard format for things. I thought MC, Nightwish, Karmazin, and Kazakh, which is not to say Slawio and Gafgarian, both finalists, aren't great, but that core 4 seemed to me the best core 4 of maybe any country. And even if it wasn't any country that could compete on that top 4, I thought had at least double the population. Now, a con is they have far fewer titles. Canada had 10, and they had some fewer icons. Canada had 48 or so than the similarly sized Canada. They both have high 30 million people, and Canada has a lot more titles and more icons. Does that make the Canadian team necessarily better? I don't think so. This is obviously a deeper team, and I think even if you cut off the last 2, Slawio and Gafgarian, and just did a 4v4, I don't know who I'd pick in that matchup. I don't know what Karmazin would be. I feel like most of when I saw Karmazin was before I was my best self, but he was so good. I was so sure that Karmazin and Deli and Seto were the three best players on the site, and I thought he might be the best of them. And this was kind of in peak Deli Seto times. And I wasn't sure, but I was so impressed by him in the day. And MC and Nightwish are easily two top 10 players ever. It just, this team looks so good to me. Specifically for a 4v4 format. Also for a 3v3. 2v2, obviously the Deli Seto team is better. 6v6, we might get to teams later that are better. But in kind of 3v3 or 4v4, I think I'm taking this team versus anyone. It's a very good team. I think that's my best case for them. They also have two top 10 players all time, maybe a third if Karmazin is there. They have an all-time top talent in Karmazin. This is a great team. Well, I want to go to the next slide. There you go. Okay. I was trying to switch for a while and it didn't. UK. We have a 67 million population, 76 icons. One of the, I think there was some before, but one of the countries with more icons than millions in population, which is always fun. And unlike some of the others that achieve that, like Finland, the population is quite large, right? They have 11 titles, which is the second most we're going to see. This is the leader in icons from a country. Now, because of the 10 players per team maximum, the next country would have more total icons if it could include all the different players in its top 100. But even then, I think it would be really close, and the United Kingdom won them with significantly fewer players to pick up that many icons. They also have the second most titles. If we look at their team, they have Slash and Koner as their big two, both either top 10 or one of them might be exactly 11th all time, but two basically top 10 players of all time with 5 titles and about 1 million icons between them. Cookie was an early contender for greatest of all time. Turds is a 2-time winner. Smokes is a very strong 1-time winner. Beast Day is the only person to ever beat Doc Evil in a tournament. Grat is just clearly an early stud. Also, if you look at the TTA Fun account, it's insane. I think it's the best record in the site's history for just an account record. And he wasn't even playing like level 1 through 4, same plus wall. He was playing weird sets, like same plus wall, nothing else. Just strange stuff that he had such a good grasp on. It's got like 21,000 wins and like 250 losses. And if you look at like the insane accounts, like Jaguar Paw is crazy, like 6,000 wins to like 400 losses or something. Koner is crazy, like 9,000 wins to like 500 losses. But this is like 20-something thousand wins to fewer losses. Absurd. Grat is crazy good. Homer, very influential, writing articles about strategy, but also very good tournament player. And Reye, who just racked up a ton of icons late and is a really key part of United Kingdom's icon count. Just made the quarterfinals of everything and then stopped playing, but sort of looked like he might have turned into a sort of Koner-like career of just every tournament an icon, basically only losing to a Great Sephiroth over and over, which, is going to happen to all of us. So, pros. They have more icons than any other country and the second most titles, despite being the third biggest country we're going to look at. Overall, I think if you look at this really impressive haul of results, if you look at the country size, which is one of the bigger countries, but it's still only third biggest, and you look at this depth of team, this seems like an incredible combo. What the hell is that third pro sentence supposed to be? Wonder what I was trying to say. Clearly, like, a word is missing, or I lost my train of thought midway through it. But what I'm gonna guess I was trying to say something about, like, if you cut off every team's best 2 or 3 players and then stuck them with the next best 5 or 6, UK's next best 5 or 6 is just insane here, right? Just absurd. Cons. UK is 4 countries, not 1. That's cheating. They should be banned. If they lost Wales here, that would lose them Grat and Reanimator. That doesn't affect the top end of their team too much, but that's like 8 or 9 icons, 10 I think around 10 icons between them, and clearly giving them Wales here does help their case, though they'd have a very good case without Wales too. And their population would come down. But Wales isn't that large. I think it's worth including them. But obviously, if people would rather not be included, I apologize. And I also think the other case against them, the more real case, because their depth and just solidity of team is incredible. This team through 4 is great. This team through 7 is great. This team through 3 is great. But I do think if we look at just like the top slot or just the top couple spots, whoever you think their best player is, Slash or Koner, and both are obviously fantastic and top 10 all-time players, the other countries we've been looking at, I think, have even better top players, right? Whichever of Seto or Delial you pick, I think's ahead. Doc Evil, I think, is ahead. Whichever of MC or Nightwish or Karmazin you think, I think either of MC or Nightwish is ahead, and Karmazin probably isn't, but it's hard to tell. Yojimbo, I think's ahead, right? So I think like those. It should be said, Slash has a very good record against the best players. But I do think the UK has this incredibly deep team, but the case against them would be their very strongest players, while great, are at the weaker end of the very strongest players for the countries we're talking about. Overall, though, the case for them is incredibly easy. They have an absurd combination of not being all that much big, having tons of titles, the most icons, and a team that is just clearly super loaded. So our final country for the 7 is the USA. The USA has 15 titles, which is the most. We have 56 icons, which is second, and a population that is much, much bigger than any other country. Our biggest before this was just over 80 million for Germany. This is about 4 times that population, about 9 times the population of Poland or Canada, and 33 times or 32 times the population of the Czech Republic, and 60 plus times the population of Finland. So this is a much, much bigger country. The team's great. Was up myself, Kamikaze, Sujiro, Kaus, Seif, Broccoli, Bren. That's Virgil. That's a lot of winners. 8 different winners is way more than other countries have. I picked Kefka and Spike to fill out the roster, but you could also insert any of Ace, Soap, Sphere, Gambit, Dalamar, Amo22, Doomtrain, and last, but also least, because he is my greatest enemy in all things, the Patriot. Some of those would have given the US slightly better stats on icons. Pat racked up a bunch of icons, Amo did, Doomtrain has. Others would give somewhat higher win rates, like Ace or Soaps, who you swap in on that last spot. Spike seemed like a good person to give the 10th spot to, but you could easily give the spot lots of different places, and it would make sense. Everyone here is really good. This is the only team that had more than 10 players in my top 100, and that is to say it looks like around 18. So really, really loaded on that front. This is obviously a great team. It has the most titles and second in icons. The case for the US would be you take the US's best 15 players and they blow any other country out of the water. You take the US's best 10 players and they probably blow any other country out of the water. At kind of any point, the US looks really strong. But the cons, it's a bazillion times bigger than every other country listed, right? If you make any population adjustment, and we will try to make some, my cat's making noises, the US is going to drop off. Also, if you look at the players here, a lot of them, particularly on the core 10 I picked, did much better in early Triple Triad. Kamikaze and Sujiro both had very successful comebacks. Kaus was active and very successful. His best year is probably 2008, which is not so early. And Seif peaked in 2009. Broccoli won a comeback tournament. But most of these players did most of their winning within the first few years of the site. And I think that could be something that doesn't hold up so well, depending on when you think the peak strength of the site was. But I think that would be the other case you could make against. So I wanted to get to some stats comparing them. I did a color-coded chart. Blue means you are the best in a stat. This is color-coded by ranking, not by amount you're ahead. So there could be 2 countries. Like, if there are 3 countries that are really close at the top, one of them will be the darker blue, one of them will be the blue-green, one of them will be the green, no matter how big the gap is, right? That just tells you the order. Worst is the dark red. And if we just look at totals, one thing that immediately jumps out as we should have expected, Finland is almost always the lowest in success in each category. It's the smallest country, and its achievement, I think, is enough behind. You can see the totals in each category for titles won, finals made, semifinals made, icons earned, just wins in tournament play between the people on their team, number of people in the top 100, and achievement, which is a stat I've used in various places, but is basically an aggregation of titles, finals, semis, and icons. So you could probably just look at the top 100 and achievement as reasonable ways to look at it. I don't know, however you want to look at it. I just wanted to offer some other stats, and I had a good time color coding them. In general, the US and UK clearly have the most achievement, very clearly followed by third place Canada. And then Poland and Germany are quite comparable. If you look down their lists, it's pretty close across the board. Very similar in achievement, close in titles, very close in finals, very close in semis. I corrected the icon count for Germany here at 30. That is the right number. Germany has a little bigger lead in wins, but it has a bunch more players, and it has more in the top 100. But very similar stats between Germany and Poland. Fairly similar between the UK and the US, though each leads a few categories, and each category they lead by a bunch, but basically ends up with the same achievement at the end. So for kind of how much each country has done, I think there's a big 2 of the US and UK, a clear third in Canada, and then Germany and Poland and Czech Republic is also kind of in range of those 2. Czech Republic, Germany, and Poland, all kind of similar, and then Finland has done a lot less. And, Finland's not the greatest triple triad country of all time. It's probably 7th best, but that's still really cool given their population. So I looked at this and I wanted to adjust it for population because I didn't think this gave the right image. So we're going to see 2 charts in the next one, and we're going to start by focusing on the top chart. The top chart is the first line gives you the population of each country, and then all the others are how many of the thing did you achieve per million inhabitants. So for instance, Canada has won 10 titles and has 38 million inhabitants. So 10 divided by 38, you get 0.263 titles per million inhabitants. And that's kind of what this chart looks like. And this is again color-coded. And now we can see the USA in last in everything, right? It may have won the most stuff in many categories, but if we divide by population, it is usually distant last in everything. Germany also we see, unlike Poland and Czech Republic, which looked quite similar, Germany has much bigger populations than either. Now suddenly Czech Republic and Finland look like the 2 powerhouses. Given that they are tiny, this makes sense. But they also have both achieved quite a lot. Then Canada looks like clear third once again, suggesting Canada, really good combination of winning at a good rate, having done a lot, and having done it despite not having that big a population. UK probably looks a little better than Poland overall, a little more yellow than orange, but those are kind of similar looking. And the stats aren't that far off, so kind of similar looking. And then Germany, and then the US is worst. But I think this is not really the correct way to evaluate population. So I did a logarithmic scale, which I think is a better way to credit smaller populations, but without just making it a multiple. Because if one country is twice the size as of another, you don't expect them to win every game with double the score as the other. That's not really how it works. You expect their talent pool to be about twice as large, and you expect a few more people from that to reach the kind of top level, but you don't go if the 2 times bigger country is 1.5 times better, you kind of go, well, it is just the better country, right? You don't go, but you have to divide by 2 and now it shows up as weaker. No, it is kind of better. So I did a logarithmic scale because that means that country having more population is still penalized, but penalized less. And it still came out with Czech Republic and Finland doing incredible amounts for their population level. Though note, again, the great weakness of Czech Republic's case is they have very few top 100 players. But Czech Republic and Finland again show up as great. Canada again shows up as third. Then we see UK and Poland. And we see the US a little better here, but still usually near the bottom. But looking more comparable to Germany than it did in the previous. All in all, I'm curious who other people think the greatest triple triad playing country is. It does not have to be reliant on my stats at all, but if you kind of look at the teams and think, what do you think's most impressive? I focused a lot on population, and maybe you care more just about pure success of a country. And if you do go pure success, then I think you would end up with the US. If you adjust for population at all, though, I think you start getting the UK ahead of the US, if nothing else. I came into it thinking this was Canada versus Poland. I came in thinking kind of, if you adjust for population, include the fact like Czech Republic only has 2 good players. This is not a full team. Finland has done a lot given their population, but they don't really have the all-time greats on the team. I don't think you can be the best country of all time if you're not bringing like a top 20 player to the table. And ideally, you'd be bringing a top 5 player. I don't really think you can be the greatest triple triad country of all time if you don't have more than 2 really good players. So if I was ranking, I'd probably have Finland 7th. There's a good argument for Czech Republic higher, but I'd probably have them 5th or 6th. Germany's team looked really good. Their actual results didn't look as good. I'm tempted to say they're 5th, but if you went like, no, you can't use the results. You just look at their talent. They're better than that. That's a very reasonable argument. I'd probably have them 5th. I'd probably have the US 4th. You know, oops, I meant to go to this one. The US has an incredible amount of achievement, but its population is so much bigger. It's just not that impressive. And so I came in thinking it was Poland versus Canada, and now I think the UK is in that conversation as well. The UK has done so much. And even when you start dividing by population, they look, you know, not great, but they don't look near as bad as the US does, right? They look reasonable instead of completely unimpressive. And so I think it's between Canada, Poland, and the United Kingdom. If you wanted a team 3 or 4 players deep, then I think Canada and Poland look better. If you wanted a team 6 or 7 members deep, you know, Poland still competes. Canada can't really. UK looks the best. If you want a team 2 players deep, it's Canada. And whatever mix you think is most impressive, I would go with. But I think those are the 3 best countries here. I think it's Canada, Poland, and UK. And I'm really curious which people think is the kind of greatest triple triad playing country in the world. Having gone through this, I expected to go through it again and have a pick. I came in thinking Canada versus Poland. I looked at stats. I thought the UK was in that conversation too, and I had been underrating them. I sort of expected as I talked through it, I'd have a pick. I do not. I think it is one of Canada, Poland, UK. I think if you removed Wales from the UK and it was just England, it probably moves to clear 3rd, but probably drops out. But I'm happy to call it UK. But I don't know. I think these 3 are really close. And I think I'm curious if people are convinced by one of the others or think I missed a key country. Like, I didn't include Vietnam. You know, Great Sephiroth is incredible, but like, you can't be there with one player. Like, I didn't include Italy, right? But I think it's Canada, Poland, and UK. And I'm really curious between those 3 what people think the greatest triple triad playing country of all time is. So curious to your feedback on this one, because I think it's an interesting question, and I think there are 7 countries with some case, but 3 countries with a really strong case.